Alright, for this video, we are going to look at solving a linear equation with fractions. This is a little more complicated than the other fraction one that I did. I just wanted to make sure that I gave a couple examples because I know that this is one of those things that students tend to struggle with. For this, again, what we are going to do is the easiest way to solve this is to just completely get rid of fractions. And so to do that, we want to find the lowest common denominator. We want to find the lowest value that I can divide by 8, 4, and 3. So for this, 8 and 4, I can divide both of those by 8, but I can't do 8 divided by 3. So what I want to do is I would have to take 8 times 3, which gives us 24, and 24 would be our lowest common denominator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to multiply each of my terms by 24. So I would do 24 times x plus 24 times 5/8 plus 24 times 3/4 x. And we have to make sure that we remember to multiply every single term by 24. If we only multiply the ones with fractions, we no longer have an equivalent expression. So we want to make sure that every single term, including our whole numbers, the 5x and the x, get multiplied by the 24. Okay. We would then simplify this, so 24 times x gives us 24. For this one, again, you can do 24 times 5 and divide by 8, but that's a lot more complicated. So what I would do is I would divide first. 24 divided by 8 is 3, and 3 times 5 is 15, which is a much easier way to do without a calculator. For the next one, 24 divided by 4 is 6, and 6 times 3 gives me 18x. For the next one, 24 divided by 3 again is, sorry, we did 24 divided by 8 earlier, now we're doing 24 divided by 3. So 8 times 2 gives us 16. And then 24 times 5 gives us 120x. So we now have an equation that we can solve that no longer contains fractions. So it makes it a little bit easier for us. We do want to make sure that we simplify both the left and right sides. So the only side that I can simplify is the left. There are no like terms on the right. So 24 plus 18 ends up giving us 42 plus 15 equals 16 plus 120x. And again, you really have a choice when it comes to this point of which one you want to move. I, like I've said before, tend to move the smaller one, so since 42 is smaller than 120, I'm going to go ahead and subtract 42x from both sides. So I have 15 equals 16 plus, since 120 is larger, we would end up with a positive sign. If 120 was smaller, then we would end up with a negative sign. So we end up with plus 78x. We would then need to move our constant terms over to the other side, so we would subtract the 16 from both sides. When we do this, we end up with -1 equals 78 divided by x. And a lot of times, if you have an equation that ends up like this, where when you divide it by 78, you think you did something wrong. So you end up with x equals -1 over 78. And you get to this point and you think, man, I must have done something wrong because surely that can't be a correct answer. If you get something like this, don't just give up and start over. Always check it first to see if it works. Okay. For this one, I am going to check it in the calculator. So if you want to watch, I'm going to show you how to check this in the calculator because it is more complicated. When I have an answer like this, a lot of times I will use technology to help me out to make it easier. The nice thing for this one, I am going to use the TI-84. You could also use the TI-Nspire. I will make sure to show you in another video how to check with the TI-Nspire. You could also just use a regular calculator. Wherever you have the x, you would just put in -1 divided by 78. I know that some of you like to use the fraction features on your calculator. You could do that as well. What I'm going to do for this, just because typing in -1 over 78 over and over again gets complicated, so I'm just going to type in -1 divided by 78. And then I'm going to hit this store button. This store button right here will allow me to store any value for any variable. And if you notice at the top of each of these, there's a green icon. I'm going to use that green icon. I'm going to hit alpha to access any of those. We would hit alpha, and I'm going to hit alpha and store because that is my X value. And then I'm going to hit enter. What my calculator has now done is it's taken this value and it's stored it for X. So what I can do is I can actually plug it into just this side of the equation. So if I want to plug it into this side of the equation, is what I'm going to look at is one side at a time to see if it gives me an equal expression. So instead of having to type in -1 over 78 3 times, what I can do is I can just hit the alpha and the X. And it puts X in there, but we've already stored what X is. Plus 5, remember 5/8 is really just 5 divided by 8, plus 3 divided by 4, and then again I'm just going to hit the alpha X. And so I really just put it into my calculator looking exactly like this does. And I end up with this ugly decimal. Okay, if you want it as a fraction, all you have to do is hit math, option 1, and answer as a fraction, and it will convert it to 47 over 58. So what we want to see is if we get this same thing on the opposite side, so we would just do 2 divided by 3, plus 5, and again, I'm just going to do the alpha X because I haven't changed what is stored for X. And I'm going to go ahead and just hit math answer as a fraction for this one so that I can see it as a fraction. And if you notice, we do end up with 47 over 78 equals 47 over 78. So since we checked it in our calculator, everything works. We know that this solution is valid, and so we know that we have the right answer. Even though it's an ugly answer, it's okay to get answers like this because sometimes it just happens that way. So hopefully this will help you, and you also know now how to check in the TI-84 calculator. As always, thanks for watching.